Hello, scale modelers. Alright, I have come up with my list of everything I have used to make my front shock mod. Of course, you probably won't be seeing this video until maybe Monday. But, yeah, we're gonna make this. We're gonna make this video. Alright. So, these are the basic things that I ended up using minus one item, which is the Dremel, which that's actually outside right now. But yeah. Alright, so the main portions you're gonna need: 5mm hollow tubing, and then you're gonna need 3mm hollow tubing, and oh, that was the wrong side of that one. And this works perfect because you don't need to make the holes any bigger. They just go in where they need to go in, how they need to go in. Alright, so like I said, Dremel's not in here, but you will need a Dremel. Okay, as far as the 5mm piping goes, other than measuring and cutting with the Dremel, there's a tap right here that I used. Okay, so as far as the Dremel cut goes, I got a measurement of 19mm, so you want to mark it at 19mm, and that's after you tap this. Okay, this is a M4 by 0.7 tap. Alright, so you want to tap that hole with 4mm, and oddly enough, it's only big enough for a 3mm tube. Well, that's the funny thing, isn't it? So, you will need a heavy-duty pair of pliers to hold this in place while you slowly tap the 4mm hole or threading into this. So you will get a little bit wider end here, and then always double check the original piece, because this has to be a 4mm die cut for the original bottom of the shock. It has to be 4mm cut. 4mm tap, 4mm cut. So after you... Actually, let me switch over to this piece here for a second. The bottom piece of the original shock. I suggest cutting 15mm up from the bottom. That gives you a few extra millimeters to make sure that, you know, your die cut is going good. You might need to trim up to 3mm off of it. That's why I'm telling you 15. This right here it's 9mm out from the bottom of the 5mm tubing, and there's only 3mm on the inside that's threaded in. because honestly, that's pretty much all the threading that I could get in, because that's why I say to measure 19 millimeters after you get done with this, because you'll probably find out that you might have up to 5 mil that's not being threaded. So you will have to cut down the metal tubing until you start seeing where the threading's actually starting on the inside of the tubing. Now, when I was tapping it, and believe me, like I said, it's not really easy, but I mean, it took like 3 hours. At least 2 to 3 hours to tap this tubing. Not even joking. So, the tapped up into here, and you can see that most of the tap actually went inside the tubing. So, you need to take a Dremel, you need to cut down a few mils at first, just so you can see exactly where the threading is. And if it's an actual started thread or half a thread, because sometimes you can get those half-size threads, which won't really work. And then you take your die cut piece and start threading it in. And if it's still loose, that means that you have to cut it in even further. So you need to cut off probably like another 3 mils. And then look inside the tubing, and if you can actually start to see like the actual threads, then you know, you take your piece that's been die cut on the end, and you start threading it in, and if you have a solid connection there, then you can measure that 19 millimeter and do your cut. Of course, you know, if you need to make sure that that's as flat as you can get, the bottom right there, get as flat as you can for that. So yeah, 19 millimeters for that one. And now the 3 millimeter, this thing's even harder. This piece is even harder to try and tap. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I started to do a little tap for the other side, which I just tried to, you know, pre-do this. So far, that tiny little itty bitty bit of tap, I think that only goes in like 2 or 3 mil right now. So, if you might find it easier to maybe start off with like a 1.8 mil tap, and then if you can't get the screw to go in automatically, then you might need to switch to the 2 mil tap. But the 2 mil tap or 1.8 mil tap, man, this can take you anywhere up to like 3 to 5 hours. Because the original tap that I used, if you look in there, that broke off. So, and luckily I was able to order more, which did a better job, which is how I got the screw in that piece right there. Definitely takes a long time to do this, but at least with this top piece for the shock, you know, all you have to worry about is tapping the screw hole and then measuring the 18 mils that you need and cut it down from there. So that's a good thing. Very, very good thing. Okay, and I said 15 mil on this. I just want to keep that out there for the original shock piece. And the die cut, that cuts threading with this on the die cast pretty much like butter. So if you want to cut this piece longer, because what I originally did is I cut it to right about here, and I was putting my die cut on here, and some of the threads that were going on were actually coming right off. So that's why I say you might need at least 15 mil, and then you can cut it down. You might want to go for, you might want to actually make it further though. So I mean, as long as you do your turning slow, you might not have to worry about, you know, like too much of the threads coming off as you're doing it. Just a heads up. You might want more than 15 mil, but you only need a minimum of 15 mil. So cut longer length, die cut it, and if you happen to notice, you know, what's what on that whole threading, you know, cut down. And that's before you get all the die cutting in. You know, cut down. And then start back in and slowly cut those threads in there. And if you notice that you have good threads at that 12 to 15 mil range, cut it at the 15 mil. And then, you know, double check to see how that's getting turned in there. Because you want at least 10 mil, at least 10 millimeters of travel where the upper part of the shock can slide down there. So, alright, and then this is either a 15 or 17 PSI rated compression spring, and if you notice, it's got the flat cut bottom right in there. That did not originally come black, if you happen to notice that. 5/16 washer, so that way this is sitting directly on the washer and not on the original part. Okay. You're also going to need, if you want to, you know, do this mod, you're gonna need scale hardware, which that I got from Model Car Garage. No, not Model Car. Model Cars Limited. Sorry, Model Cars Limited. So this isn't something else you will probably need to use the Dremel on. To cut these down. These are 2 mil, these are stainless steel, by 15 mil. And that's pretty much what I've used on all the pieces right here. I did have to cut them down. You will need the 2 mil bolts, or 2 mil nuts. Dremel, I've had to use a Sharpie or something to mark my where I need to cut on, like the tubing. For the suspension pieces. Probably not exactly this one. I did have another one I was using, and I couldn't find it anymore. So, but luckily I found this. And this is a metallic one, so came in handy. I marked it for where I need to cut down the bolts. Because if you're switching over from the suspension that this came with to this, you want to make sure that you have free movement for the travel. And that's one of the major restrictions. So, and that would mean, you know, drilling some of these holes to get the threading that's in there out, so that way the bolts can go in. You have free travel. It's not being hindered by, you know, the screw being in there and, you know, not being able to move properly. And that could be why some people's suspension has been breaking, because the screw's going right into the suspension part, and it only can move as far as that screw will let it move. So that's why I chose to use bolts. So the bolts being anchored on the other side by the nut, so that's what's keeping the parts in place, not the screw. So the screw is a hindrance on the suspension. Alright, and I got these little rubber washers, which, oh, I forgot. Okay, I forgot where I got these springs from. It might be from the same company that I got these little rubber washers from. So, and these are the rubber O-rings, rubber O-rings that I'm using as like a ball joint cushion. And I got one of these up underneath the bolt head, and I got one of these right here. It gives it like the right amount of flex that you would expect a ball joint to have, and it, once it's all, you know, tightened down, it really does make it look like a ball joint for either the upper or lower ball joint right there. So I'll move that, and if you want to pause it so you can look at the information that's on there. And this is not the company that I bought this from. The company that I got this from is McMasterCar.com. And if you notice, I also have a smaller set. I didn't know which O-ring was going to work better, and that size worked better. Now, I might have gotten this from the same place. All I know is that these are Lee springs. Don't remember if I got them from that McMaster-Carr, but the company that makes these is Lee Spring. So if you Google Lee Spring, then, you know, you'll be able to go through and search, which I have put for some of my other videos. I do believe I had what kind of springs these were, possibly, but they're the same size as the original spring that came in there. Might be a bit of a difference, like height wise, but just take your ruler, measure your springs. You got to measure outside diameter, inside diameter, and length, and then the whatever company you actually choose to purchase from, if they'll also put the PSI rating on there. You only want the springs for the front that are anywhere between 15 and 17 PSI rated. So, and you know, tools for the tap, I got the handle for the die downstairs. And I also got this from Model Cars Limited too. This is a little 3mm wrench, because those 2mm bolts have a 3mm head. You're going to want super glue, and something else I don't have up here is JB Weld. You might want to get a JB Weld. I got blue thread lock right here. Heavy duty pair of pliers. You might need to use a small pair of pliers too, just so you can, you know, like hold the piping in place when you're trying to get the screw in. Oh, yeah, something else. Internal lock ring. This is what I have up in here. This is, I don't know where this internal lock ring came from. I happened to, you know, be cleaning underneath my couch cushions, and it was there. That's heavy duty. That is a heck of a lot heavier dutier than this piece right here. This I got from clipsandfasteners.com. It's supposed to be a automobile clip and fastener, and that one is more heavy duty than this one. This one, it'll work, but I mean, it's got too much flex to it, and you'll see when I do the shock video, when I come up with all the measurements for you guys, that yeah, what I had to do to keep that in place, because this one's so heavy duty that once you put it on, it stays in place. I don't know if it's something that came out of like an old DVD drive or whatnot, but I didn't have to glue this one in. I didn't have to JB Weld it in place either. So there's that. I did mention screwdriver, right? Okay, something else you are going to need is files. Some sort of file to file down the tubing, file down the bolts after you cut those down, so that way you can try to make sure that the threading gets restarted on the bolt, or, you know, you can put it on the part and then, you know, do it that way while it's on the car. I chose not to do it while it was on the car or on the part, so that way I didn't accidentally screw up that part. So, let's see. I got some things I got through. Okay, so there's McMastercar.com, there's Micromark.com, which it's scale modeling tools and whatnot, so I got stuff from there. Sorry about that. I got stuff from that, yeah, I said Model Car Limited, right? Okay, so Micromark.com, McMastercar, local hobby shop. So a lot of the stuff I got from the local hobby shop. All the tubing I got from there. But like all the taps and dies, they either came from Micromark.com or they came from Model Car Limited. Washer, I got the small package from a Harbor Freight. Some of the files that I got, I actually got, like the diamond ones, I actually got that from an actual model company, the modelexpo.com. These ones I just bought at the hobby store, at Lowe's. These were from Clips and Fasteners. Yeah, so I mean, there's quite a bit that has actually gone into making this front shock. I started working on this back in like November or December, but it kept getting delayed because some of the things were not available at the time. So if you think about, so right before or during Christmas time, I was probably maybe it wasn't that much. It was probably 5 to 10 hours into it until I needed to. Oh, I need this. I need this. Okay, going online. Okay, out of stock. Out of stock during Christmas time, and then they didn't start getting stuff back in until, you know, like maybe January, like mid-January, late January. So I had to put this on pause for a while. And then ever since I was starting to getting all this stuff in, I probably have anywhere up to like 200 hours of work hours into just the front shock right now. And right now I'm just at the point where I'm going to disassemble so I can repaint, which that'll probably add like another 15 plus hours into this. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you want your mods to be functional so that way they won't break. You gotta put the time and effort and actually use, you know, the products that you need to make sure will last, so that way, you know, stuff doesn't break. Alrighty, so if you guys find this helpful, you have any questions or anything, you know, just put them in the comments if you want. And thanks for watching this super long video on what it takes to build your own front shock mod for the Eaglemoss Delorean. And as always, thanks for watching Brian's Builds.